Alright, this week we're going to go back to another Alaskan pattern. We're going to tie the Dolly Llama today. I will be upfront and honest, this is not a pattern that I am very proficient at. I've tied maybe a dozen of them. I had a couple of orders to fill out and there were some folks requesting Dolly Llamas. So I did a lot of research on them. I did some tying. A couple of them got thrown away just because, you know, I mean, it takes a while to dial in a pattern. I watched one of Kelly's videos and I think he was talking about the cougar and he's like, really it takes 100 flies to where you feel comfortable and have something dialed in and perfected. I'm obviously not there with this one, and I really do believe that. I mean, there's still some of my patterns that I tie today that I haven't tied a ton of, but I've tied, you know, maybe 4 or 5 dozen of them, and they're okay, but I can definitely tell the difference between that and some of the ones that I've tied thousands of. The ones that I've tied thousands of, I can tie them in my sleep. The ones that I've tied 4 or 5 dozen, it's off a little bit. So I'm going to apologize up front. As far as the basics go, as far as you being able to construct this pattern off of this video, it's going to work, but it's probably not the best effort on my behalf. I'll just be honest right out of the gate. So, right here we've got the Dolly Llama. This is pink and white. This is a black and white. This is a big pattern up in Alaska. Obviously fishing for the Dolly Vardens. They do a lot more swinging up in Alaska than we do here in the States. A lot of folks on the moat. Swinging's starting to get popular down here in the lower 48, but I haven't bought into it and I doubt I ever will. It's just, it's a passive way of fishing. If you like swinging, my buddy Fred, he is a phenomenal fisherman, probably one of the best fishermen that I've ever been around. We're going to do some of his patterns here coming up closer to winter. He loves to swing flies. I tried it. I'm not a fan. I like the active retrieve. I like making fish come to me instead of searching for them. It's a style thing. Whatever it is, if you like the swing game, that's fine. You probably don't like the fast active retrieves like I do. It's just what you come up with. So without any further ranting on this, we're going to go ahead and get into the Dolly Llama. To start off on this one, I have a B10S size 2, and I'm just going to lay a thread base down. This is a pretty quick, easy pattern, but like I said, I haven't tied a ton of these, and there's still some things that I feel that I don't have perfected. So if you guys are really proficient at these and you see me mess something up, let me know and I'll try and fix it for the next time I shoot this video with the multi camera angles. So what we're going to go with here is just, we're going to do this one pink and white today. This is just a pink Magnum rabbit strip. And I'm going to take one of these out. Perfect. I work with the whole strip. I think they're about 1 foot long at this point. I work with the whole strip on this. I find it a little bit easier than just trying to guesstimate my length, and then that way if I mess something up, I don't wind up being short on material. Now I'm just going to take this, I'm going to measure this out the length of my hook, maybe slightly longer at best, and I'm going to leave my thread hanging right at the point of this B10S. I'm going to peel the fiber back so I have a nice tie-in point. Just go ahead and wet your fingers, get this stuff out of the way because it's going to want to trap itself as you're tying it in. Just get that out as best you can, and then make a couple of loose wraps. I'm going to get 1 loose, probably 2 loose wraps, and then my third I'm really going to cinch down on it. There we go. And I'll bring a third in and really crank down. That stuff's secured, it's locked in place. Now I'm going to come in front of it and then just lay a nice thread base down. And I'm going to tie this off. I'm going to separate the fibers again, and I'm going to tie this off right in front of the eye of the hook. And you can see I'm going to stretch that hide pretty tight. Wet my fingers again, create a nice tie-in point, and I'm going right in front of the eye. One, you can start to secure them right out of the gate on this one. Two, and a third. Now I'm just going to peel this hide back. I'm going to go right in front of the hide, really crank down on this. That way, when you tie this in over top of the hide, you really crank down and you advance in front of it because you're tying on a bare hook. With this gel spun thread, when you really cinch down after your second wrap around the, or right behind the eye of the hook, it's going to take your previous wraps and really lock it down over top of this hide that you tied on before. And then this stuff's not going to swivel, it's not going to rotate on you after you put those couple of good thread wraps on there. Now all I'm going to do is just build up a little bit of a thread base, tightening down maybe every 5th or 6th wrap, and then I'm going to whip finish this. And this is all it is for our back hook. Just pink rabbit hide. I missed a cut there. Pink rabbit hide right over the top. And that's it. If you want to, you can put like some sort of ice dub or whatever before you fold the rabbit over top. I haven't found it necessary on a couple that I've tied just because the underhide covers the back section of that up. So you can skip that step if you want. This is going to be our connection here. Let me get this right side up. We're going to use 30-pound spider wire. Get in the center, and there we go. 30-pound spider wire. It's always weird looking in the monitor and having to do opposite of what you feel you should do to get everything squared up on the camera. 30-pound spider wires. Spider wire is what we are going to use for our connection. And I usually take a piece that's, I don't know, twice the length of the hook, just so I have a little bit extra to work with. It gets a little frustrating when you work with this stuff and it's just a little bit too short. And I'm going to loop this in the front, and then I'm going to bring 2 open ends right in front and pull down on it too tight and ruin everything. Like I said, I'm not proficient at this pattern yet. It's foreign to me. So, you're going to watch me stumble through it. Gives me an opportunity to explain what I'm doing again on this connection the second time. In case you missed it the first time, here we go. I'm just bringing that wire up through, and then my loop is going to sit right in front of the eye of this hook. I can zoom in probably a little bit more. It's going to be off center, but that loop is sitting right here, and my tag ends are coming up through. Very solid connection, very good sturdy connection for this pattern, or for any fly that you want to do this way. I haven't experimented with it too much on the articulated stuff that I tie. I have a couple of them out there. I don't know how the durability and everything goes, but that spider wire is a pretty cheap option. You get a lot more bang for your buck on that. If it works out, I may start using some of that in my patterns as opposed to the American fishing wire, or I grabbed my barb there. The American fishing wire or the beadalon. a little bit more pliable too. So, all right. So now I took this out. I'm using this. I still have the whole length of rabbit strip. I still have that whole hide there. I'm just taking this out, and I'm going to measure about the length of my front hook. My front hook on this one, you can use absolutely whatever you want. These are just some junk hooks that I have laying around, and I'll explain why I use a junk hook here in a minute. I don't see it laying around the bench anywhere. It's just a generic TMC. It's a 3X long. I think this is a size 4, if I'm not mistaken. Use whatever you want on this. This really isn't important whatsoever. But like I said, I'm going to measure out the length of my hook, and I'm going to have that much sitting over the back, and then I'm just going to pull it in slightly because that's a little bit too much to have a full length sitting back there. So we'll probably go, what, 3/4 of the shank length, and then 3/4 sitting right here. I'm just going to move this forward. I'm going to capture this spider wire all the way up to my cone head. This isn't a tungsten. You can use tungsten if you want, by all means. This isn't. I don't really find it necessary on this pattern. And then, because you're not really jigging it, it's just kind of a passive retrieve. And then I'm going to just double that over and then push right through that spider wire and cut that off. If you really want to shore this up, you can feed it through the cone head, down through the eye, and then back up through the cone head. Juice doesn't seem worth the squeeze on that one. In my opinion, it doesn't really give you any added benefit. Maybe it shores up your cone head a little bit, but we'll take care of that later on. Now, the next thing up on this is you want to make sure I stretch this out to where this connection wire is nice and tight, and then I want the connection wire tighter than my rabbit hide. I'm bringing this rabbit hide from the back hook. I'm not cutting it. I'm leaving things as they sit. I want the rabbit hide to have excess material. If this stretches out, that spider wire is going to catch before the rabbit hide does. So if you're just err on the side of caution, measure it out and then push back just a little bit more, and then that way you're not going to have a loose point and it's not going to snap half of your fly. It's still going to stay connected, but you're going to lose this, and it's probably going to unravel if you keep the rabbit section really tight. So make sure that your connection, your wire or whatever you're using for a connection, make sure that it's gonna catch before your rabbit hide does. And an easy way to do that is just pull this tight and make sure that you still have some play in that rabbit, and then this wire or spider wire, whatever it may be, is still tight. So now we're just going to work this all the way up to the front, and we're simply going to wrap these Magnum strips, or this Magnum strip, we don't have multiples, all the way up to our cone head. I'm going to make one loose wrap here. I'm going to get a second loose, and then I'm really going to start to tighten this up as I go forward. And you're going to see this stuff's all just going to peel back toward the bend of the hook. And if you have to, just wet your fingers, work that material back to where you're not trapping anything, and then like I was saying, just one wrap right in front of the next. On this last wrap, really make sure that you give that hide a good stretch and you sink everything in underneath that cone head opening. And I'm just going to go ahead and tie this off at this point. And then trim this hide. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take a little bit of zap, if I can find it on the bench here. There we go. This is an old Dave Whitlock trick right here. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to paint my thread with some zap. And I'm just going to make a couple of good wraps right behind this cone head. And you're going to feel it as you pull tight the materials that you've already trapped underneath that cone head. As you pull tight, that thread's going to push forward toward the eye of your hook. This just gives me a little bit of extra security knowing that that hide is captured under there and I've got a little bit of glue. I don't really think it's necessary, but it makes me feel better doing it, so I do it. Alright, next up on this is I am going to take, this is just lateral scale 1735. Right here, this is the full-size lateral. The micro lateral is what I use on the rainbow riffles. Kelly uses it on his pearl necklaces. This is the most reflective material that I've ever worked with. I absolutely love this stuff. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to double it over. Move that around a little bit. I'm going to double it over and I'm just going to tie this in on the side right next to my cone head. Get a couple extra secure wraps on that. Make sure it's running right down your lateral side. There we go. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the camera side. I'm going to take this, get out of there. Make sure that it's, you're not going to use the entirety of this, but make sure that it's close to even on both sides. And then, like I said, just take that right down your lateral side, right behind the cone head, and then I'm going to do 1 or 2 wraps, maybe 3 or 5, 7, who knows, just to secure that down. And then you can see that lateral scale's going right down my side. Untwist that a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is just trim this right at the bend of this size 2 V10S that I have on the back side. Same thing with this on the opposite side. I'm going to take this right to the bend, trim it right there. That gives you nice 2 lateral lines that are going right down the side of your fly. These ones, it's a little staticky in here, so this stuff's wanting to follow me around wherever I go. Just trying to wet that down a little bit, hopefully. Cut down on the static slightly. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do, well, not the last thing, I had one step on this that I didn't see in some of my research, but I'm going to take this is a white Magnum rabbit strip, and I'm going to take this and measure it out to where I catch the point of my hook on the V10 size 2. That hide ends right at that point, and I'm going to flip this upside down. I have it already measured out where I want it, and I'm just going to clip this, and I'm going to cut a wedge into the hide on this, so you just have a nice little V section. Now I'm going to take that hide and lay it right over top. I'm going to have a little bit extra going right over top of my cone head. Once I get this tied in, I'll show you what I have here. That little bit of extra is going right over top of the cone head, and I'm just going to take my bodkin and push that underneath before I really secure these wraps in. Push that under the cone head. Make sure that I catch that. And then you'll actually feel that hide sink down underneath that cone head. And what that does is it really secures up that cone. It's not going to be able to slide back and forth on you. It's going to make that a little bit more secure than if you were to just tie that off and trim the excess before it goes under the cone. And I'm just going to make a couple of good wraps here, and then go ahead and form a quick dubbing loop. It's really tough, well, in my experience on the dozen of these that I've tied, it's been tough for me to get all of the rabbit hide and everything so close to the cone head without having this little bit of a gap here. So what I do is I cover up that gap, you know, using like Kelly's Conehead TNA style wraps, the Peanut Envy, anything to where you're using a cone head to 10 it to. And I just take a little bit of ice dub. I'm going to use red on this. It's a nice little blend, and you'll see it when I tie this in. It gives a nice little color transition, a little bit of a breakup, if you will, between the pink and the white, and I think it looks really good. But also what it does is just covers that gap up that drives me absolutely nuts. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of red ice dub in a dubbing loop. Get that little bit of white out of there that I trapped. And I need to half hitch before I do this. Grab a quick half hitch, spin this up, get it in the cradle, and now we'll bring this red around. Once again, wet your fingers, peel all of that white and pink back so you're not trapping any of that rabbit. And I'm just going to make a couple of quick wraps. And I'm really going to cinch down on this, sucking that material down behind that cone head. And this is really going to shore up that cone head. It's not going to walk on you. It's not going to travel back and forth. I guess that's the same thing. Gimme you. Get over there. And it gives, like I said, a nice little color transition, and it fills up that little bit of open space that you have in there. And the red kind of gives a little bit of a bleeding gill, whatever it may be, more so if it were a bait fish pattern. But I just like the red. It kind of looks, it's the closest color that I've found on the pink and white. It just doesn't stand out too awful bad. We'll do a quick whip finish, and then I'll give it one more just for a little bit extra security. And then really pull that tight. You'll feel it sink back into that cone head again. Get rid of that. Get that out of the way. Now the last thing that I'm going to do on this one, and it looks funky in the vise right now, I know, because it's going all over the place and I don't have this tight in the back. The last thing that I'm going to do on this one is make sure that my lateral lines are still running laterally. Those look pretty solid. The last thing that I'm going to do on this one is they have some hook restrictions up there in Alaska to where some of the rivers, I don't know, maybe all the rivers, you can only fish one hook. So they cut the front end, which is common on swing patterns, cut that front hook off, and then it's just your back hook is the only one that you have on there. To me, being a disciple of Kelly Gallup, that is sacrilege, cutting off the front hook. But the way they fish them up there on the swing and everything, a lot of times fish will get them on the swing. They're usually picking them up on the back hook. The way that we fish them here, not so much. So cutting off the front hook is a little bit tough for me to do, to be honest with you. Now, if I can get this to sit in here without going crooked, or yeah, it's still crooked. Let me put this section underneath here and then bring it up on the camera side. That way it looks a little bit more accurate. Once it's off the vise and sitting like this, yeah, this one's probably a better view of that. There we go. You can see that there's that rabbit strip on the bottom that gives you just a nice clean underside of the fly. It's coming through pretty good on the one I had in the vise, but you can see the color breakup, the color transition between the two, and once it's in the water it does look a hell of a lot better than what it does on the vise. It's just a little bit weird because I'm not able to stretch everything out and get that nice clean look that I want on the vise. So taking a picture of this one may be a little challenging before I do it for the video, but it's my own thoughts there, thinking ahead. If you guys have any questions or comments on this one, probably ask somebody else, because like I said, I've only tied a dozen of them. Ask somebody up in Alaska that really does these all the time. And you may probably get some better advice than what I'll be able to give you, because I don't have the experience on them. But something that I'll do a little bit more, and I got a couple more orders for these patterns for some folks heading up to Alaska, so I'll get a couple more of these wrapped up and shipped out. Maybe by the time I get those orders done, I'll be a little bit more knowledgeable and be able to do a little bit better of a tutorial on this one. But I think for the limited experience I have on this one, they turned out okay. I think I'd be alright fishing them. But like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, as always, leave them with me. I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next fly.